I did do a little bit of research for my interview. Now, you started your footy in Diamond Creek. Now, little birdie tells me that the old man Ray, was he the coach of under-13s out at Diamond Creek?
Yes, so Dad, I started a little bit later. Mum and Dad were really keen for me to, I suppose, just wait a bit longer than all my mates to play footy. I think they protected me a little bit, but yeah, Dad coached me in my under-13 year, I think it was, and that was the only time he coached me. But yeah, that was an experience in itself. I wasn't a great player back then. I kicked a few goals, but at the end of the season, I worked out pretty quickly that Dad hadn't been voting for me in the best and fairest, because I don't know where I finished. I finished maybe a little bit higher in the league, best and fairest. I didn't come in the top 10 in the club. So Dad totally wiped me.
So the old man was a little bit harder on you than what he was on everyone else, which is usually the case.
Yeah, no, but he's a great coach, and he was great for all my mates, and they loved him, and he's obviously he had a bit of experience in the capo, so he knew what it was all about, and we had a bit of fun that year.
And you do mention your dad. Now, I was the biggest Collingwood freak as a kid. Obviously, the Shaw family and the Shaw name at the Collingwood Footy Club is immense. Like, as I mentioned, I used to go to the footy and watch your old man play. You had your uncle Tony. You got you and your brothers. Did it still have a fair amount of pressure being at the Collingwood Footy Club? Like you obviously, one of the biggest teams in the competition, if not the biggest. Do you feel that extra burden that when you go to a place like Collingwood, for starters, but then obviously, you got the Shaw name attached to you as well?
Yeah, I don't think I really appreciated it, Corey, until I got drafted and actually played for Collingwood. I obviously grew up at the club and spent a bit of time there, especially when Tony was coaching, and having a bit of interaction with the guys the year before I got drafted, because Collingwood were pretty keen to get me in the father-son. So I played a bit of reserves footy the year before. And it wasn't until I got to the club that I really understood the magnitude of not only playing for Collingwood, but having the last name that I do. And I probably didn't cope as well as I could have or should have with that pressure. And that was part of my growth as a kid and as a human being. And it wasn't until I got to Sydney where I really found myself and understood what it took to play AFL consistently and at the highest level.
But just going back, I know there's obviously a lot of the pressure that you've got the Shaw name, but it must have been incredibly cool that you obviously follow Collingwood as a kid. Like I said, I barracked for Collingwood, and to be able to number one, play for the club that you support is a big enough honour, but to be able to run out in the black and white, knowing that your dad and the family had such great history with the Collingwood Footy Club. Yeah.
So it was a pretty special moment, and we knew from a long way out that I was going to go to Collingwood. It was probably halfway through my draft year that we committed to the club, and it wasn't until the draft day that it really kicked in, and it's a very special feeling, and to understand that the history continues with our family and Collingwood, and I was a big part of that at the back end, and to carry the name on. So it was pretty special.
And what about, I suppose, like your old man had such history with the club and even playing in those grand finals. I think he played in 4 or 5 losing grand finals from memory. Did you feel like even going into the grand finals, how many did you play? You played in 1 or 2 grand finals?
I played in 1 in 2003, and I was emergency for the 2002 grand final. Yeah.
So, did you feel any of the pressure going into those games? I suppose with Dad, and he hadn't really broken the duck in terms of getting the premiership medal. Did you, again, feel any of that other pressure going in there because Dad hadn't done it?
Oh, certainly. I think going into 2003 granny and having performed pretty well against Brisbane only a couple of weeks beforehand, we were pretty confident. And but the pressure was immense, and I certainly didn't deal with it well that day, and it was one of the most disappointing parts of my life and my career, even to this day. So the pressure was there, but learned a big lesson that day, and carried that with me for the rest of my footy journey.
Isn't it amazing, Rhyce? Like when you think about it, at North Melbourne, when I say we're always wanting to get and play in front of those big crowds. Like we're wanting to be exposed to those big crowds, so we have the finals experience. But now that you say it like you do, it's not only Collingwood. Yeah, they might get the advantage of actually playing in front of those big crowds, but I think the pressure once you get to the back end of September may be even greater than what it is even on other players, because you've got the weight of the Magpie Army on your shoulders.
Yeah, it certainly plays a part, and it's whether you deal with it the right way or not. And I was privileged enough to play 4 or 5 Anzac Day games, and that's probably the pinnacle for us outside the grand final. And it's pretty special to be able to do that, not only year in, year out, but we're playing in front of 80, 90,000 every week. So there is a lot of pressure. You understand that, but that was Collingwood, and that's what makes them such a great club. That the supporters and members just rock up and in their droves, and that's why they're so powerful as a business as well.